2022. So kudos to that. And of course, we'll talk a bit about your journey in terms of how you've built Agoda over these past many years that you've been associated with the company. But I have to ask you this question first, because the Mahakumbh is currently on and you're associated with the travel and tourism industry. It happens once in 144 years. There's a lot of buzz globally, lots of headlines. And of course, travelers are coming in not just from India, but across the world. I have to ask you this. Have you been able to take out time to perhaps plan a schedule, because just a couple of days left for the Mahakumbh to get over?
So unfortunately, no. Not personally. I wish I could take some time to do that. That sounds amazing. You know, I was reading in the paper just now that the impact on Indian economy is around $35 billion. So what a remarkable thing. Just shows you how strong travel is. So it's going to be big on my plane in 144 years, I promise.
All right. So, Omri, let's talk about the travel industry. And of course, during the introductions, we were talking about how there have been disruptions related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, there are geopolitical disruptions underway. There are disruptions related to consumer behavior. And we'll touch upon each of them one by one. But let's first understand your thoughts about how you're perceiving India as a market. What is it that really excites you about the Indian market?
So, India is in hyper growth. I mean, it's very hard to ignore, first of all, the GDP growth and the travel industry growth. I mean, it's all over the place. Secondly, the amazing investment by the government, specifically the travel sector, through the Udan scheme and others. There's no precedent like that anywhere in the world of such a huge investment in airports, in infrastructure, in airplanes. All of those things happening, and it's a remarkable power. In addition, it's very hard to ignore how strong India is as a tech powerhouse, right? So I can tell you that at Agoda, about 10% of our personnel is Indian, both in Bangkok, by the way, and in India. And that thing is just growing, and it just shows you the importance. That's another area that we need to talk about. So all of those together make India a superpower that you cannot ignore. And as a result, it's a huge piece of our planning, not only on the business side, but also on the way we build our personnel, the way we build our company.
Right, and that's great when you talk about the tech transformation that's going on currently in India, coming in from somebody who hails from Israel. So thank you very much for that. When you talk about particularly the India market, where are your investments going vis-a-vis, when you compare India to some of the other emerging markets?
So I think one of the, first of all, we are a very global company. So we are the #1 most downloaded travel app in APAC outside of China, which means that we have a huge scale. So first of all, for us, the immediate thing is to use that scale to do two things. A, bring travelers into India. We know those travelers very, very well. We can localize, personalize our services. They've been using us for a long time. Now, how do we convince them to come and visit this remarkable country? That's one side. The other side is the outbound side that, it's no secret that Indians are traveling much more, leveraging those infrastructure investments and the growing middle class, traveling outbound. So again, we are there to serve them. And then over time, spend more and more to cater for the domestic travel that we're seeing great, remarkable numbers with. So really across the board for us.
Right. So when you talk about, these kind of investments that are going into Agoda and, of course, building the overall architecture of the company, if I were to ask you what are some of the, most asked for destinations as far as India is concerned, and, of course, some of the other markets, I believe you're present in 200 countries. Yes.
So destinations for India. So Indians go, as you can imagine, all over the place. India is such a big place. So many, there are the people that go west to the Europe or the US or Canada. Even some South America, even less. And obviously, Asia is a huge destination for Indians, specifically Southeast Asia, places like Thailand, Malaysia, increasingly Indonesia, which is very interesting for me, Vietnam, Singapore, all of those places that are growing very, very fast in India. And you know what's really interesting? People ask me what are the destinations that flourish or the origin that flourish the most. And the answer typically is where the friction is taken the most. So I can tell you in Agoda's numbers, the destinations and origins, interestingly, that grew on searches the most, 2024 over 2023 are Thailand and Malaysia in the top 5, 6, Thailand and Malaysia. And you know what's special about those markets? Those are the places where the Indian government removed the visa fee. Yes. and those places removed completely visa from restrictions from any Indian coming there. So it's not very surprising that something as small as that, it sounds small, generates such huge growth. So it just shows you that removing restrictions, opening the border, letting people come, just immediately stimulates travel.
Absolutely, and that's also part of, like you said, that's a priority of the Indian government to sort of improve its ties diplomatically with other countries, and of course to ease some of those visa restrictions. But Omri, when we talk about geopolitics and diplomacy, there are a lot of changes that are happening in the world today after the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, what we are seeing right now is an administration change in the United States. And of course, everybody is anticipating and wondering what's going to be next so far as the Donald Trump administration is concerned with respect to its policies, whether it's related to inflation, whether it's related to Fed's trajectory. Then, of course, cost of living, like I said, is also another a big challenge. You also have two wars playing out. There is an attempt by the parties involved to sort of bring a halt to those wars, but still there are uncertainties. As a business that is into the business of travel, tourism, hospitality, how are you navigating those challenges?
So I think there is short term and there is mid-long term. I'd say as long as GDP is growing, travel will be fine. Travel is such a strong force. So I think travel tend to grow a little bit slightly faster than GDP. So there are, of course, turmoils, and we've gone through a pandemic that seized all travel for a few years. But I think the job of travel brands like us is to take a deep breath and to understand that pendulum swing. But when you look at it from the medium long-term position, then just keep holding your strategy. Hold your breath if you need. We needed to hold our breath for a long time during the pandemic. And keep doing what you're doing. Believe the travel will recover. And I am a strong believer that with the growth of the population, certainly in a place like, and the economical power, certainly in a place like India, but also globally, we'll be fine. The one thing that I say that we really need to react to when economical hurdles are happening is around price. So everybody that used Agoda knows that price is one of our massive, unique selling points. So we live and die by price. And what you see is that the customer sensitivity to price increases. It's kind of obvious. The harder the economical situation is. So what we need to do is to work harder to bring the best deals to customers, to encourage them to travel when it's a little bit harder to put your money out there. That's the main thing. But other than that, stick to our strategy and believe in the GDP growth that drives travel growth.
So what's going to be your strategy when you talk about strategy? Because there's competition hotting up in the segment as well. It's not just legacy players, but newer companies, newer models like Airbnb, which are doing rather well.
So first of all, travel is a huge space. There's room for everybody. By the way, a lot of those companies we are partnering with, because what we found, also domestic players, when we partner with others, then we learn. It expedites our learning. It expedites our ability to build a better product, and we also help them. Everybody brings something, so usually you get a bigger haul. I want to say for us, and we can talk about a lot of things, I would mention three things. First of all, the baseline is tech. I mean, you had the dear Kanban's person sitting here and talking about the same thing. Tech is probably the strongest firepower, the strongest power on the planet. And it's only increasing and increasing. If you want to be able to deal with everything that is coming, tech agility, tech efficiency, the best engineers, that's your baseline. If you don't have that, then there's a limit to how much you can tweak. That's one. That's where you start. Above that, I think two things are the main thing that made us who we are. One is this focus on price that we talked about. That's not going to change. Ultimately, if you drive the best price to the customer will come. That's our belief. And the second thing is what internally we call it DLP. It's deep local merchandising, DLM, deep local merchandising, localization. What do we mean by that? Is that what Agoda has done very, very well is being local global. It means that if you're an Indian customer, you need to feel when you're going to Thailand or Malaysia or Singapore or the UK, it needs to feel as if you're booking domestically into your own city. whether it's your user experience, whether it's the payment options, whether it's the way things are organized, whether it's the customer support. I can tell you, we talked about it in the past, that customer support in India is different in other places. You've got to do all of those locally to enable them to go globally. And that's a big, big, big effort, technical effort, service effort that will continue to drive our strategy.
Absolutely. And let me ask you, when you talk about, providing and improving customer experiences to sort of give them a more localized yet a global experience, I want to understand from you the kind of consumer preferences that have changed post the pandemic. I mean, the industry went through a rather difficult time, but it has, again gone back up. Has the consumer become more demanding in terms of the kind of experiences that they choose? And if you could give us some key trends in that space that you witnessed.
So I don't know if necessarily demanding, but it definitely shifted. There are a few things that are very, very clear. One is online, right? The biggest winner of the pandemic, I think, is online versus offline. I think everybody understands it. It just expedited across industries, not only travel, but even in travel, places like, say, booking experiences, attractions online is an area that expedited tremendously throughout travel. So everything jumped a decade during travel, during the pandemic, which is one thing. Second thing, I think where the consumer is more demanding is flexibility. So flexibility has a price. Usually you have a price for a non-cancelable offer that is cheaper, and then the flexible offer usually is more expensive. So you can try to measure what's that price, how much